started for this evening. So with that, everyone, welcome to our discussion this evening. The topic for the discussion is empowering mindsets for effective communicating and relating. It's quite a mouthful. Uh, what it is about is that in our life, we are communicating and relating with people. So the question that we want to ask ourselves is that, are we effective in doing it? Are we getting the results that we want in life? So that is what we are looking at. Now, this topic that we have for this evening is in the context of relationships, because what we are doing in our life is that we are going through and navigating the relationships with the people around us. We have the relationships with our bosses. We have the relationship with our colleagues at work. We have relationships with our subordinates. We have relationships with our spouse. We have relationships with our children, with our parents, with the shopkeeper, with the Grab food rider who comes. So those are all relationships. Whenever we interact with people, we are relating with them. So the question is, would you like to have mutually enhancing relationships? Because the dark side to relationship is a relationship that is toxic, a relationship that is not bringing mutual benefit. You can have one-sided relationship whereby one person is feeding off the other. So that's why the key word there is, would you like to have mutually, both sides, the relationship is enhancing you as a person, uh, in in being the best that you can be and bringing out to the world the values, the important things, the potential that you bring out into this world. So that's what we are referring to, the mutually enhancing relationships. The reason why we are looking at relationship is because every one of us wants to lead a higher quality of life. We ask people, what is it that you want in life? I want to be happy. I want to be wealthy. I want to be healthy. We are looking for higher and higher quality of lives. And that's fine and good. It's just that we want to realize that the quality of our lives depend on the quality of our relationships. Think about it for a moment, that it is all about relationships. The happiness that we experience, it depends on the relationships that we have with the people around us. Now, the quality of our relationships just doesn't happen like that. That's the result that we want in our life. So the quality of our relationships depend on how we interact with one another. So when we interact in a high quality way, that results in a high quality relationships. Now, how we interact is influenced by our thinking, feeling, our behavior. Our interaction is our saying and doing. That
Then I have Mr. Mahendra.
uh, so are you okay? I was stunned for a moment. Okay, so how we interact is influenced by our thinking, feeling. Now, our thinking, feeling is governed by our mindsets and frames. So that's what we are going for this evening. In as much as the skills of interacting, the skills of speaking, the skills of behaving, they are important. And we want to learn all of those, the skills of relating, the skill of communicating. At the same time, what we are looking at tonight is, what are the mindsets that support, that helps us to behave in ways that allows us to interact well with the people so that we can have better quality of relationships and therefore experience a higher quality of lives. Now, the mindsets and frames in this context are the mindset and frames relating to how we relate to people, how we connect. So the mindsets and frames about relationships. So what we are looking at is what are the underlying assumptions that we make about people and relationships. Because think about it for a moment. When we have healthy assumptions about people, we can behave in healthy ways. Now, when we have unhealthy assumptions about people, for example, a person may have an assumption that people are crooks, people are criminals, people just want to take advantage of other people. So how would your behaving, how would your way of interacting with people be like? Yeah, so if I were to think about Franska is very, uh, what example? Difficult to find a bad example for Franska. She's such a nice person. But let's say Franska just want to control people. So if I were to have that assumption about her, then I will not make her a co-host for this evening. So notice our assumptions about people cause us to behave in uh, in ways that will reflect those assumptions. So what we have is that when we have a certain assumptions, let's say I have good assumption about people, healthy assumption about people, that cause my thinking feeling to be good and healthy. And when my thinking feeling is healthy, my behaving becomes healthy. And when I'm behaving in ways that are healthy towards you, then the outcome of that interaction, that connection will be healthy as well. So that's basically why we want to look at those assumptions that we have about people. So the next question that we might want to ask ourselves, so what assumptions about people are healthy? What do we consider healthy? And if if I were to say that this assumption is healthy, this thinking about people is healthy, what's the basis of those assumptions? So this is where the next point that I would just like to bring to your attention is that the assumptions that we have about people that are healthy, for many of you, you have come across them. When you learn NLP, we call them the NLP presuppositions. So presuppositions are assumptions that we have about connecting, relating with other human beings. Now, funnily enough, when I first learned about this NLP presuppositions, I was introduced to it just as assumptions about people, that when you make these assumptions about people, it helps you to have healthy relationships. So I just took it for granted and just experimented with it. And I realized, yeah, it worked. It worked by having these assumptions. At the same time, I did not really question, where did this assumption come from? So who's to say that these assumptions are right? In my case, I just experimented them out. I found that it worked for me. And yes, I continued with it. Then as the years went by, I began to question, where did it come out? So this is where, for those of you who are familiar with NLP, and I know that many of you have gone through the NLP practitioner, and there are some of you who are NLP trainers in this room that we have today, is that these presuppositions were originally the NLP presuppositions that were modeled upon Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, and Milton Erickson. So Bandler and Grinder, these two geniuses who model Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, and Milton Erickson, they detected these ways of thinking about human beings that create that mutually enhancing relationships. Now, only later on, then I begin to realize, reading what Michael wrote about these presuppositions, I realized that these assumptions or presuppositions goes all the way back to Abraham Maslow, based upon his good human study. And from that good human study came out humanistic psychology. So these assumptions that we are going to be discussing this evening comes from humanistic psychology of Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, and the rest of them. It came from the thinking that the psychologists that were present during the time of Maslow were the psychologists of people who are psychologically unhealthy. So Maslow said, does that kind of psychology apply to healthy human beings? So that's when he decided to, okay, why don't I study people who are healthy, not people who are unhealthy. So I'll study people who are healthy. So that's why he started with what was called the good human study. He went to look for models of good human beings who are interacting, relating with other human beings in amicable, in loving, in a way that is mutually enhancing. So what he did, and the people who came later on as well, they were modeling highly successful individuals. So when they model highly successful individuals, they detected the mindsets and frames of highly successful human beings. And we are referring to the context of connecting and relating with one another. So that is what we will be discussing this evening, the mindsets of highly successful human beings in the context of human and social relations. And these mindsets are derived from humanistic psychology based on the works of Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, Rollo May, and all of those. And we, when I say we, I'm referring to me, I learned it from the perspective of NLP presuppositions. So that's what we'll be discussing this evening. So I'll just pause there and invite any questions or comments just with that little bit of introduction with respect to what we are discussing this evening. So go ahead, anybody has got any questions? And I would like to also welcome those who came in after I started speaking just now. So welcome Marilyn, Amin, Dr. Amin, Azila. Thank you for being here this evening. Yes, thank you, Guat Ching. I hope that this topic continue to interest you. Anyone has got any questions or comments? Yes.
I want to say thank you.
Oh,
Amin.
thank you. Right. So shall we continue? So let's continue with what are these mindsets. So the first category of mindsets that are healthy, that are empowering, that helps us to build mutually enhancing relationship, the mindset in the category of mental processing, how we mentally process information. So the first mindset, it comes from the moment I want to mention his name, I forgot. The map is not the territory. So can you give me the name of the person? I forgot. What's his name? Oh, you'll come later. The map is not the territory. It refers to the fact that when we look at the world, we are actually look what we are actually seeing. When we look at the world, what we see is just our map of the world. The world is the territory out there. In order for us to be able to detect what outside there, we take the information using our five senses, we take the information and create a map in our mind. So when we look at the world, we are actually referring to the map of the territory. And Korzybski, that's the name. And Korzybski says, the map is not the territory. Our map is just a symbolic representation of the territory. So those of you who are traveling and you put on your Google map or Waze, I'm sure you don't confuse. You are not confused that what you have on that small screen is just a map of KL. So you do your best to navigate KL or wherever that you are driving based upon that small map. And you don't ever confuse that that's a map. So if, let's say, Waze asks you to turn right and you notice that the police has a roadblock there, you you don't just turn right just because Waze say you can. So you say, oh, there's a roadblock, so I need to uh, continue straight on or take left. I can't turn right. So this is where it's very important to make a clear demarcation, make a clear distinction that my map is just a map. My map is just my expectation of what the reality is, whilst the territory is the reality. Many people confuse this. Many people, they just, since they think about something to be is, they think that is. People confuse that. And they insist that this is that. So when there is a clash between map and reality, the best thing for you to do is to accept and be friendly to reality. So as you drive, we say turn right, and you notice the police having the roadblock there. You can't say to the police, look, Wes asked me to go straight ahead. Why are you stopping me? It doesn't make sense, doesn't it? And yet people do that in their lives. They have this expectation of what their boss is going to behave. And when their boss behave differently, voila, my boss may always behave like that. Why can't he behave differently? So be friendly to the reality. Just notice that, oh, that's how he behaves. Okay, I'll behave accordingly. So, so the first part is to make this clear distinction that whenever there is a clash between map and reality, to accept the reality and to be friendly with reality, change our map according to the reality and not insist that the map is right. So when the votes go against you and you insist, I won the election, that's delusional. Yes, thank you, Padmini Korzybski, Alfred Korzybski. Map is not territory. So the thing about map and territory distinction, if we do not make that distinction between map and territory, we become delusional. So that's why when we are interacting with human beings, when we are relating with human beings, we may have some concept, some expectation of how they are going to behave. And yet when they behave differently, realize that that's the reality. My expectation was just my map. The reality, the territory is the reality. So be friendly and adjust accordingly. So this is the first presupposition of mental processing. Now, the second presupposition, the second assumption with respect to uh, mental processing is that we all respond according to our map of reality, not the reality itself. You see, there is so much information out there in that reality. So I take whatever information that I'm able to take, I create the map. And I am just interacting according to what I have on the map. And my map is not accurate. So people's behavior corresponds to their map. So if they see that there is a frog in front of them, they will behave as if there is a frog in front of them. So what we do is that we want to be able to use people's behavior as clues to their maps. I have an idea, I have a sense of what my map is. However, your map is inside your head. I can't see, I don't have any idea of how your map looks like. So what I'll do is that since you behave according to the map that you have inside your mind, I'll use your behavior as clues to show me what you have inside your mind. So this allows me to be able to understand you because you behave according to your map and I behave according to my map. In order for me to understand you, I need to be able to view, to see, to hear how your map looks like. So I use your behavior. So knowing that people respond according to their map and not to the reality itself. So I look at people's behavior as a way for me to understand how a person's map look like. If not, if we don't have this assumption that people respond according to the map of reality, we will judge people's behavior as wrong when we compare that to our map. And this happens frequently. When we look at people behaving in a certain way, and according to our map, that behavior is not good. So we judge the person as behaving in a way that is not good. So we want to understand what's their map. Then only we can understand their behavior. So that is why I typically give give the example of those of you who are familiar with me. I give the example of grasshopper giving me a tight slap on my face. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with that story, I have now she's 12 years old. My eldest granddaughter. Her name's Azara, and I call her Grasshopper. Grandfather calls her Grasshopper. That's another story behind it. When she was about 3 or 4 years old, we were just playing around right over here in this living room that I am in right now. We're just playing around because grandfather is a best playmate. So we're just playing around. And suddenly she whacked me right across the face. So when she did that, I was stunned for a moment and asked her, Grasshopper, why do you do that? So that question came from a judging attitude. I judged her behavior based upon my map. So that was an interrogative question. And she went as if stunned. And oops, at that point in time, I realized that, oops, I asked the wrong question. Luckily, my daughter, Shaima, her mama, was there, and she asked the classic coaching question. She asked the question, Azahra, when you did that, what do you mean by that? That question allows her to reveal her map. She said, Mama, it was a happy hit. Main pukul-pukul kan happy. And my daughter continued on. Oh, so does that mean you're happy? Yes, I'm happy playing with grandfather. So from understanding, only then my daughter can lead her daughter to richer understanding. So my daughter said that, oh, I'm glad that you're happy playing with grandfather. It's just that, do you know that when you hit someone in the face, it can hurt? Look at grandfather. Do you think that is hurt? That I faint, pain. And then she looked at me. I'm sorry, grandfather. So people respond according to the map. So that is why it is erroneous. It is wrong for us to judge or evaluate a person's behavior based upon our map. We don't know what's their map. So when somebody behaves in a certain way, to be observing, to be detecting, and to be noticing what they are doing, and to know that they are behaving in that particular way because they have a certain map inside here. So the question that we want to ask, when we don't understand that behavior, what it means is that I don't understand that person's map. I need to ask. Okay, so let me pause over here. Two presuppositions, two ways of two mindsets that we can take on in order to have healthy relationships with the people around us. One is that the map is not the territory. And the second one that we discussed just now is that people respond according to their maps. So, any questions or comments? Please just unmute yourself and you can begin asking question or make a comment. Go ahead.
I say something, Mas?
Yes, please.
I think this is a interesting thing to talk about because this is where all the crises happen between one person to the other, and being judgmental happens every day because we tend to project our what is in our mind, whereas somebody else is different from us. So what you are mentioning actually resonates very well for persons like me who are more than 60 years old. Now I understand why in manufacturing, I come from manufacturing base, why people argue over things that they take for granted. You know, they take for granted that this is what it is, as it is said that the map is not the reality. I think your example of using the Google Map and Waze is very relevant there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashim. Thank you. And because your map is apparent to you, your map is evident to you. That's the word that Ashim, when you use people take for granted. Because it is so apparent to them, it never occurred in their mind that people cannot see what they are seeing. Like taking for granted. Thank you. So are you good with that? So let's move to the second category when it comes to connecting and relating with other people. Now, moving from the first two presuppositions, the map is not the territory and we respond according to our map of reality. So what do we do when we have different maps and we are interacting with other human beings who have different maps? So the third one, with respect to strategy. So what is our strategy now? The presupposition is we respect each person's model of the world. We respect each person's model of the world. Each person's model of the world. We have how many people this evening? Let me just count again. 1, 2, that's 12, 13, including me. There are 13 people this evening. There are 13 people here this evening, and there are at least 13 models of the world. I say at least because some of us are schizophrenic to a certain extent. We develop additional models of the world. Okay, so each person's model of the world is different, and each person has a right to that model of the world, just as I have a right to the way I want to depict to the world. So you do have your right to to depict your model of the world. So since I want my model of the world to be respected, therefore your model of the world deserve to be respected by me as well. So respect each person's right to have their model of the world. Now, respecting here doesn't mean agree. I'm just respecting that you have a right to have that opinion about how the world works. Now, whether our model of the world, whose model of the world is right or wrong, it depends on agreed upon criteria. So if we use a certain criteria, then we can have a discussion on whose model of the world is the more accurate one. So for example, when Hashim mentioned the context of, let's say, in a manufacturing organization, so when it comes to doing things in a certain way, then you can have people arguing about how should I do this? How should we do that? Now, in let's say a manufacturing organization, you have your standard operating procedure, you have your processes in place. So when you have disagreement, you refer to those benchmarks, and those benchmarks will allow you to make a decision whose model of the world is right and whose model of the world is not accurate. So when you have agreed upon criteria. However, when you don't have agreed upon criteria, you will continue to be in disagreement. And when we say we respect each person's model of the world, when we disagree amicably. It is not about agreeing to disagree. It is about disagreeing and controlling our behavior so that our behavior do not hurt or harm one another. That is what I'm referring to as to disagree amicably. If not, if we do not respect each person's model of the world, the disagreement of the model of the world may escalate into conflict, and conflict will lead to fighting, wars, insurrection, whatsoever. So to disagree amicably. Yeah? And whenever I mention about this point, I keep giving the example to those who know me of my experience with two of my colleagues when we were attending ACMC, the Associate Certified Meta Coach training in Grand Junction, Colorado, over 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. So we were attending that training, and one day in the middle of the week, we were given an opportunity to go to the shop. We finished early, 6 o'clock early. Otherwise, it finishes at 9. So I went to the supermarket to buy stuff, and just walking back from the supermarket, I noticed two of my friends from the same class walking, and I just joined them, and I noticed that Darren and Jason, they were talking animatedly about something. So I just joined them and say, "Hi, guys, how are you doing?" Yeah, and Darren was talking about Darren's a pastor in Anchorage in Alaska. So he was talking about he gets very uptight about some of the people in his community. There are people in my community who are so narrow-minded to the extent that if there is anything that is not from the Bible, they'll say that is the work of the devil. And me coming here learning about coaching skills, they say that I'm in league with the devil. And my brother-in-law thinks so too, and he will not talk to me. If he has anything to say, he'll say it to my mother-in-law and get my mother-in-law to say that to me. And Jason, dia batu api sikit lah, firestone. He said, if I know that you're in league with the devil, I wouldn't speak to you either. So Darren ni lagi marah. He got really upset. So they were just talking about that. And we were just walking. The distance from the supermarket to where we stayed was about slightly less than 2 miles. So quite a fair bit of distance. And as we were, I was just listening the whole time. And while they were talking, suddenly Jason said to Darren, Darren, do you remember me telling you that I'm a Jew? So Darren said, oh yes, I remember. You said you're a Jew. How about in the Jewish community? Are there people like that? So Jason said, of course there are people like that, very close-minded, and they will not want to accept anything from others. And Darren said, so what do you do with that? Jason said, well, let them be. I do what I believe to be best, what is useful and helpful for others. If people want to say things, I just let them be. So they were just talking like that. And somehow something hit Jason. There were the three of us, Mazuki over here. In the middle, there's Darren, big size fella. And on the other side is Jason, tall, skinny guy. And Jason leaned over Darren, looked at me and said, Mazuki, are you a Muslim? And I look at Jason and said, yes, I'm a Muslim. Suddenly all quiet. Talking. And then suddenly Jason said, hey guys, have you heard of the story of the Muslim, the Christian, and the Jew? They were walking down the road. And the three of us burst laughing. And I treasure that moment because that moment helped me to understand this presupposition. Because in the context of theology, Muslims, Christians, and the Jews have been fighting and killing each other for centuries. So we disagree in terms of theology. And this is the best part, that even though we disagree at one level, when it comes to our behaving to one another, we behave in ways that are loving and kind to one another, even though we have those disagreements. So this is the impact of we respect each person's model of the world. So, questions and comments. Franska, how many times you've heard that story? Yes, anyone?
Mazuki, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, Marilyn.
What's the difference between agreeing to disagree and disagreeing amicably?
Agree to disagree is mental. It is up there. Yeah. To disagree amicably, we are bringing it into the physical universe. Our behaviors are amicable. A person may agree to disagree, but what if their behavior is hurtful or harmful? So to disagree amicably, what we are saying is that we are bringing it into our physical universe through our actions, to be able to control our action, that our actions are not hurtful or harmful to one another. That is what we are referring to. Amicable refers to the behavior. So it is in the external world. To agree to disagree, we are still internal. We are inside our thinking, feeling. We are using our thinking, feeling powers. The moment we say amicably, we bring the thinking, feeling into our saying, doing. So that is where we are connecting. So not just up there, it comes out through our body.
Thank you.
I hope it makes sense to you. That's how I make sense to me. Thank you, Marilyn. Anyone else? Okay, so let's move to the next category. This category is called the communicative presuppositions. So there are three presuppositions I have in front of me. One is the way we communicate affects perception and reception. The way we communicate affects how the person receives and how the person perceives my communication. People understand your communication not just on what you communicate, not just on the words, what you say, but also based upon how you communicate it. And since we know that we communicate from state to state, so our state affects the quality of our communication. So we need to get into the appropriate state for communicating. So if I want to get my child to sleep and I am agitated and upset because he's giving me 1,001 excuses for not going to sleep, and I'm telling him, go to sleep, I'm communicating the agitation that is within me. So do you think that he'll go to sleep? He'll be agitated as well. Okay, so how we communicate will affect how they receive our communication. So if we don't communicate in the way that helps the person understand our communication, then people will misunderstand your communication. Yeah. So let's say your darling suddenly comes up to you and say, you don't say that you love me anymore. And you were just reading going through the football result, and you are upset that your favorite team has lost. And you answer, I love you. You think your darling can feel, huh? So the way we communicate affects perception and reception. So we want to put ourselves in the state that helps the person to receive and understand our communication the way that we want them to. Yeah. The second one is the meaning of your communication lies in the response you get. And this is where many people make the mistake. They make the mistake that thinking that the meaning of their communication is what they understand inside here. So when I say something to you, you are supposed to understand what's inside here. Now, know this, we never know what we communicate to another person, since we never know what they hear or sense or perceive. So it is only through exploring their responses that we can get an idea of what they have understood. Remember, people respond according to their maps. So when we communicate something, we don't know what they receive, and we don't know what is the map that they have created. So we need to explore what is inside there through their responses. Only then we can know what they have understood. So what we do is that use their responses to make changes in our communication until they respond in the way that we desire. For example, you give your staff an instruction to do A, B, C, and D. And the staff does A, B, and C, doesn't do D. And for many people, many managers, they just get upset and say, you didn't listen to what I told you. I told you A, B, C, and D, and you just did A, B, C. And then you just release that barrage of words on the fellow, and the poor fellow was thinking, when did he ask me to do that? You see, why did he do A, B, C? Because that's what he understands of your communication. Somehow that D part didn't get to him. So the meaning of your communication lies in the response. So when you notice that, oh, I asked him to do A, B, C, and A, B, C, and D, and he did A, B, and C. So it means that he understood that he needs to do A, B, and C. So what about my communication that he did not receive that D part? So to be able to just explore, to understand how did that get missed. So in that way, you are exploring in a way uh, that is amicable, that is friendly, that is coaching, that is facilitative, instead of just letting your emotions on that particular person. So when we do not operate from the meaning of your communication lies in the response you get, we may think that people are stupid, people are dumb, people are recalcitrant. So we have all of those concepts or label about people. It's just that they have not understood fully what we have said. So this is another assumption, another presupposition that will be useful for us to calibrate what people have understood of our communication. Okay? And the next presupposition is resistance indicates the lack of rapport. When people resist our communication, our request, whatever that we want to uh, convey to them, it is not that they do not want to listen to us, because people have a positive intentions for themselves when they resist what we offer. So in order to help them to be able to receive our communication or receive the offer that we are giving to them, we want to create rapport. Create the rapport, because creating rapport will reduce the resistance, and this leads to better understanding. And what I have mentioned over and over in the last few weeks is that rapport is moment to moment. You may be in long-term relationship with your partner. However, rapport is in the moment. Just because you are in long-term relationship with your partner, it doesn't mean that you are always in rapport, because both of you have so many things in your mind, and your mind is focused on whatever is important for you at that particular moment. And the moment uh, each of you are thinking of something else, you are not in rapport. So before you communicate, get yourself into rapport. So that's why in the NLP program, we go into the skills of rapport. One of the skills of rapport is the skill of supporting. That helps us to enter into rapport with a person, that reduces the resistance. Yeah. So if we don't understand, or we don't assume that resistance is just an indication of the lack of rapport, what happens is that we begin to frustrate ourselves due to the misunderstanding. We label, or we judge the resistance as disagreement. We judge the resistance as not wanting to go along. We judge that resistance that we detect as this person doesn't agree with me. So from this perspective, what we are saying is that whenever there is resistance, oh, it's just that we are not in rapport, that's all. So I need to get into the process of building rapport in order for me to to diminish or to destroy that resistance so that we can be in communicating with one another and sharing values with one another, because the state of rapport allows us to be sharing values with one another. So those are the three presuppositions related to the communicative process. The way we communicate affects perception and reception. The meaning of your communication lies in the response you get, and resistance indicates the lack of rapport. So any questions or comments, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I say something, Mas?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
When you say rapport is moment to moment, it sinks into me just now, because quite late this evening I was doing some very interesting DIY work, and I was having some physical difficulty because of the nature of the work. And at that point of time, my partner was trying to give me advice. So, sometimes when you don't ask for advice, please don't give advice. but luckily, Alhamdulillah, because I attended your neurosemantics regularly, it reminds me communication is the feedback that you get. And I learned something new today, that you said rapport is moment to moment. So now I understand why a couple who has been married for 48 years, they can end up in verbal fight. Thank you very much. I got a good perspective today.
Thank you for the example. Yes, thank you. Anyone else has got any comments or question? Very good example about what we are referring to. That resistance indicates a lack of rapport.
I hope it's a good bad example. So I told my wife, luckily I know neurosemantics now. Oh, I say, go ahead and attend the class more. It's good for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Anyone else? Marilyn, you're hiding behind the aquarium.
I like that, Hashim. I think it applies for everyone, not only those who've been married for 40 years.
Thank you. Right. So let's move to our next category of presupposition, which is in the category of human behavior and responses. This is equally important assumption to have about human being. So the first one here is that person and behavior describe different phenomena. This is where many people, they get confused. They confuse person and behavior. Remember what Confucius says? Franska, don't be confused. Don't confuse person and behavior. That creates lots and lots of anxiety in a person. Now, people are more than their actions, words, emotions, roles, etc. Yeah? Behaviors can be useful or harmful depending on the competency or incompetency. A person, on the other hand, is intrinsically valuable whether the person is competent or incompetent doesn't diminish the value of a person. If you value a person based upon the competency of a person, then all of you will throw your babies away because babies are incompetent. And yet, yeah, they don't even know how to go to the toilet for themselves. You have to put them in nappies and all that. They are so incompetent. And yet, we value them highly. We cherish them. It's your Christmas present, isn't it? Despite their incompetency. So this is where we separate person and behavior. When we separate person and behavior, only then we are able to approach another human being more resourcefully with greater love and kindness, so that when we see them behaving in ways that may be hurtful and harmful, it doesn't mean that the person is bad. It's just showing that there's something about the thought processes that they have in their mind. They may be incompetent in using those. They may be incompetent in using the words and the behavior that causes hurt or harm. Just like the example of grasshopper. That behavior of giving grandfather a tight slap on the face has no bearing on the value of her as a human being. So if we do not separate person and behavior, we wrongfully judge a person as bad just because he or she did something harmful out of ignorance or incompetence. Just ask yourself, how many times in your life have you done something hurtful or harmful to someone or something because you didn't know that it was hurtful or harmful? So person and behavior describe different phenomena. And this also goes into your concept of self. When you are able to separate person and behavior, you are able to esteem yourself unconditionally and work on your self-confidence. Because confidence is about the behavior. Esteem is about self. So when a person doesn't know how to separate person and behavior, when they are not good in doing something, they mirror that on themselves, saying that I'm no good. So that's an unhealthy mindset. That's an unhealthy situation that can get people into problems with themselves. They can be fighting against themselves. Okay, so that's one. And the other one is every behavior or experience has a positive intent. People develop external strategies to accomplish things. So let's say at 7 years old, you develop a certain strategy in order to get things done. Now, sometimes those strategies that you developed earlier, it ceases to be useful, or there can be other ways that you can do that in a more accomplished way. Now, know that the behavior is driven by positive intention. It's just that the strategies may not be useful now. So when you look at people behaving in a certain way and you think, why is he behaving in that way? You want to go into what is the positive intent of that behavior. Because knowing the positive intention for a person's behavior will help you understand the person, one. And then once you understand the person, you can help the person to learn new behaviors that are more resourceful. If you judge the behavior purely on the behavior, not understanding the intention, then you are quick to label. You are quick to judge people wrongly. You are quick to say that is wrong, and in that way, you will lose that relationship. So, to look at a certain behavior, not just at the level of the behavior, to ask yourself, so what is the intention behind the behavior? Because that behavior is typically driven by a good intention to get a certain result. It could be just that the strategy, the behavior itself, is a strategy that is now obsolete. So the person just needs to learn new strategies. So those are the two things in the context of human behavior and responses. Person and behavior describe different phenomena, and every behavior has a positive intention. So let me just open it up to any questions or comments for everyone. Everyone good with that?
That's okay. Every behavior has a positive intent, like every single.
Sorry, can you speak louder? I can't quite hear.
Sorry. Is this better?
Yes, much better.
Every behavior has a positive intent, as in like every single behavior has a positive intent, even people who have negative intentions, like people who intend to harm others. There's also a positive intent behind that.
Positive intention for that person. He or she wants to does something to achieve an outcome for themselves. That is what we are referring to positive intention. For example, questioning the results of the election because he wants to remain president. That's the positive intention.
Oh, so it may be a positive intention. Oh, okay, to that person. I
Yes.
see. Okay, but not necessary to others, right?
Yes. So that is why we in neurosemantics we frequently talk about ecology. We talk about ecology. So
Right.
when you pursue the intention that's positive to you,
Yeah.
does it also bring good or bring value to the ecology, to the others around you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always check our ecology, right? When we do something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So it doesn't mean that a person's positive intention is the right one when we look in the context of ecology, because my behavior in not my behavior lah, but the president's behavior in pursuing for his presidency is creating chaos, and now resulted in 5 people died in the rioting in Washington. So his pursuit of his positive intention ecologically is causing harm to others. Yeah.
And we find out a person's intent by questioning.
Yes. Yeah. This is where coaching conversations come in.
Yeah, the coaching. Yeah.
To be able to understand the person's map, to their thoughts, their beliefs, their understandings, all of this, to understand that. And when a person is able, when a person's psychology is healthy, when they realize that their pursuit of the intention using that strategy is causing harm to others, then they will want to change their strategies. However, when a person's psychologic is not healthy, that's when they want to continue pursuing their intention without consideration of others. So in that situation, then you need to uh, step in. For example, uh, uh, your son decides that he wants to play with a knife. He wants to learn how to play with the knife because he see the daddy playing with the knife. I hope you don't do that, Jason. Positive intention. He wants to learn how to use that. He wants to play. That's the positive intention. However, you detect that he is incompetent and unskilled in using that because he's only 1 year and 19 days old. so he's not skilled yet. So we need to intervene. We intervene in that scenario. His psychology is healthy. However, his competency is not up to par. So we intervene. Some people, because their psychology is unhealthy, they are willing to sacrifice the health of others for their own intention. Then we also need to intervene. So that's why he's getting impeached right now. However, in the context of people who are psychologically healthy, once they have an appreciation and full understanding that their behaviors can be changed and they can still achieve the outcome when they change the behavior, because the new behavior is going to bring greater good. People who are psychologically healthy will go for that because people will make the best decision that is available to them at that particular point. So a psychologically healthy person, when they have options, this one gets me what I want, this one also gets me what I want, and yet I know this one uh, gives me greater good. A psychologically healthy person will go for the one that gives greater benefit. Yeah. Okay, right. So I hope you don't mind. I'll just squeeze in one more presupposition. This one is in the context of learning, choice, and change. This presupposition is called people have the resources they need to succeed or they need to respond to the world. They have the resources. And when we talk about resources, we are focusing on the 4 core resources of that human beings have. The resource of thinking, feeling, and the resource of saying, doing. The reason why they are not able to respond to the world successfully is because they have not learned how to access, to strengthen, and sequence these resources into effective strategies. So, taking on this presupposition that people have the resources they need to respond to the world, all that we need to do is to help them to access, to strengthen, to sequence those resources into effective strategies. People are not broken. And we don't have to fix them. It's just that they have learned wrong strategies or unuseful strategies or obsolete strategies. And because of that, they may have difficulty in accessing the resources to more effectively deal with the things that they are dealing now. So if we don't have this concept that people already have those resources, we fall into the trap of thinking that people are empty vessels. People are, okay, I'll use that word this time. People are stupid. So because of that, I have to keep on telling them what to do. So that is why some people just won't go away, because they think that the rest of the people are stupid and don't know how to rule themselves. So I have to come back and rule you. People have the resources. All they are lacking is the strategies. Teach them how to use their resources. So especially for those of you parents with small children right now, your task is to teach your child how to use their internal and external resources, how to sequence the use of those resources so that they can get the right strategies and they're good to go. So it is not about me coming in and teaching them what to do. It's about me facilitating, helping them to utilize all of what is within them in order for them to succeed in life. And this is where I believe the analogy of the stone angel is appropriate. That in the story that I mentioned about the grandfather of John Heron, he's a stone mason. He makes sculptures out of stone. And when John was about 6-7 years old, asked the grandfather in awe, because he saw his grandfather made a beautiful statue of an angel, and he in awe asked the grandfather, grandfather, how do you manage to make a beautiful statue of an angel? And the grandfather smiled lovingly at him and said, Johnny, it's easy. The angel, she's already there. I just take out what is not her. People already have the resources that they need to succeed. We just help them to sequence them, to take those resources, use them in the right way, and they'll be the better for it. Okay, so that is the ninth and the last presupposition that I'm bringing into this discussion this evening. So any questions or comments with respect to not just that particular presupposition? However, let's take it over the whole of what we have been discussing this evening. Any questions or comments that you would like to make? So go ahead. Are you okay with that? Yeah. So if you're okay with that, then I'll just go through and invite each and every one of you if you have something to say before we end this session. So I'll start with Vincent. If you like to say anything before we end the session.
No, but let's say sometimes in a conversation, if we run out of things to say, how should we handle that?
In a conversation.
Yeah, if we run out of things to say, how do we handle that?
Ask question.
Okay, okay. That's all from me. Thank you.
A very good point, because, for example, in the context of coaching, sometimes, let's say you are talking to somebody, let's say with his subordinate, you ask the person, what is it that you want, or what is it that you need to do? And they say, I don't know. Marilyn, Xander is not at that age yet, but he'll come to the age whereby you ask something, I don't know. So, don't know what to say lah. So you go, so what do you know? You go to the other side. Yeah, so questions. Okay. So thank you, Vincent, for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Rina, anything you'd like to say or comment before we end?
Hi. First of all, sorry, I came in late. And okay, basically my my comment would be, how the way we coach is we're supposed to ask questions for us to, and once we get an answer, we're supposed to actually ask further on that and so on. But how do we make sure that our type of questions is actually not colored by our own judgment? How do we become aware that we are not judging? Sometimes it's an unaware situation. Okay, maybe there's something that we can talk in another session, but that is something that I was just thinking, how do we become aware?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a deliberate effort, and it requires practice. In meta coaching, we call that the know nothing state. To when I'm coaching someone, I deliberately go into the state of I know nothing about this person in order for me to understand what this person is facing. I need to ask questions. So that's how when I go into the know nothing state, whatever the person says to me, I'm just receiving, I'm just understanding. So there is no judging. This is also a meta program. I shift my meta program from judging, bring it into perceiving, to be observing, in the words of Tina Turner, to hold on to every word that the person says and only understand from that person based upon what they say. It's not based upon my map of the world. So that is when I need to take out my map of the world and put it somewhere else and just clear the screen. So the moment I clear the screen in the state of know nothing, I'm open and receptive. So that would be a state, and it is one, it is intentional. I intentionally will do that. The other is it requires practice to be able to do that at will. I hope that answers your question, Rina.
Yes, it does. Thanks so much, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, Dr. Amin, if you'd like to say anything before we end.
Yeah, Mazuki. Yeah, my question is this, not question, is a statement. When you make a judgment, more often than not, we are judging the behavior, but as a reflection of the person. I mean, if I can stay on judging the behavior only, I'm fine. But we tend to link the behavior and the person, and we do not understand the positive intent of the person. You get me, no?
Yes.
So if we can stay focused, I'm only judging the behavior, then it should be okay because I'm not touching the person. Because the moment I touch the person, the map issue comes in, the positive intent comes in, and the communication will break down. That is my comment. If I can split the two, I'm only commenting on the behavior. I don't like what you did. It has nothing to do with who you are. That is my comment, Mazuki.
Thank you. That's a very powerful distinction. Yeah. So when you see Xander picking up the knife, Marilyn, yeah. So you need to judge that behavior is dangerous. It doesn't mean that Xander is crazy, okay? So thank you for making that distinction, Dr. Amin. So Danielle, over to you.
Yeah, Mazuki, I have no comments. So it's a good session, a lot of refresher for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. And Marilyn?
It's easy for me not to judge my son, but not as easy for me not to judge my partner. Double standards, double standards.
Jason, gua simpati sama lu. So, Jason, anything that you like to say?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Marilyn and Jason. And Guat Ching?
What I learned today is my map is my expectation of reality. So I just need to be friendly to reality and be flexible if my expectation is not meeting.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that, Guat Ching. And Padmini?
Hi, it was a good session. Thank you. No comments, no questions either. Thank you.
Thank you, Padmi. And Hashim, any comments or questions from you?
I think it's more on from the communicator perspective is whether he is intuitive or he's a sensory person.
Mhm.
So if he or she uses that to one extent, like he believe what he believe, and then without checking and asking, then that's where he end up with. Even I saw some coaches they project their own rather than asking the right questions. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Hashim. Thank you. Dr. Anwar?
Thank you, Mazuki. It's a good revision. I think some of us have heard these propositions a few times in the earlier courses and so on, but looking from another angle, so it's refreshing as well. And you know, looking from another point of view.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Franska?
I remember all the papers that stick in your classroom. It's a good revision. Thank you.
Good. Good. Yeah. So this is where I thank you, Franska, for remembering. Do you remember the sequence of the?
Wow. I didn't know there's a sequence to it.
Oh yes, there is a sequence to it. And also the color coding.
Color coding, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So this is also a good thing that you mentioned that, Franska. This also gives me, as I mentioned when I started this session, initially I learned the presupposition as just assumptions that you make before you do anything. That's what presuppositions are. It's just that when I discovered where these presuppositions come from, then it increases the importance of what they are. It basically are mindsets that have been modeled from highly successful people in the area of relating, communicating, and social life. So these are the mindsets that these people have, and that is why they have successful relationships in their lives. So taking on these mindsets will make it easier for us to interact and relate with the other people in our lives. So I hope that gives you an added perspective, as Dr. Anwar mentioned, an additional perspective of looking at things. And my wish is that may you have successful relationships in your life. So before we end, just a little announcement for next week. We will be going into the topic of meta coaching. So we'll be focusing on coaching, and the question and the topic for next week is the attitude and spirit for questioning excellence. So that's what we'll be doing next week. So with that, I thank you, all of you, for being here this evening. I appreciate your presence, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session. So good night, and may God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Padmini.